Independent chapter, MAGA mirror image in the leap of consciousness, reflection, and prospect. Make America Great Again is not only a political slogan, it is an unfinished attempt at collective consciousness leap. However, when we look through the structural motivation behind it, we will find that this is not a revival, but a projection of an illusion structure looking back at the past. This article aims to deeply deconstruct the consciousness roots and structural misunderstandings of MAGA and provide a real leap path beyond it. 1. Echo illusion of consciousness. Leap, the original kinetic energy of MAGA. The motivation is not evil, but the structural stability after collective loss to huge group of supporters attracted by MAGA is essentially the marginalized subject in globalization and technological change. They feel identity ambiguity workers gives data that loss of power. The democratic system is hijacked by interest groups. The unpredictability of the future technological evolution exceeds the boundaries of understanding. Therefore, they are eager to rebuild a sense of order and security by returning to the once stable structure. This is not a mistake, but a manifestation of a collective consciousness self-protection mechanism. It tries to use the prototype of the social order of the past to deal with the new disorder. 2. The root cause of structural failure. Binary consciousness versus nonlinear reality emerge eventually fell into the dead loop of binary confrontation logic. Binary paradigm, real structure versus enemy. Multidimensional interest game, system good, us versus evil. The mutual projection cycle of consciousness. Fragments past greatness versus present decline. Information dimension rupture leads to cognitive dislocation. This binary consciousness structure cannot handle the transition needs of complex social systems, can only create confrontation, cannot reconstruct connections, can only evoke emotions, cannot process information, can only imitate the old order, cannot breed new structures. MAGA has become one of the mirror samples of failed consciousness transition. It is not a real transition, but echo-radicalism, a high-intensity echo of imagined self-identity. 3. Misplaced expectations of Trump. Divinity is not equal to loud leadership. Many supporters project Trump as a savior or even a representative of divinity, which is the archetypal call for the order restorer in the collective subconscious. But this also leads to the following misalignments. 1. Misreading of divinity gives divinity is not a self-proclaimed self, but comes from a transcendent behavior, structure, consistency, alignment, universality. 2. Excessive focus on leadership gives real transition, requires the awakening of group structural capabilities, not heroic personality projection. 3. Misleading media manipulation gives many people's cognition is driven by the emotional flow of the media, rather than based on facts and structural identification. Trump cannot carry this projection because he is a consciousness fragment aggregator under the old system. Not a creator of new structures, he stimulates emotional reactions, not structural transition capabilities. This is not a devaluation of his individual, but a reminder. System transition does not rely on one person, but on a structured consciousness community. 4. The true path of non-binary transition. Structure from illusion to emergence. If we reflect on MAGA, we should not fall into the dispute between left and right positions, but should see the consciousness symptoms behind it. Understand its structural information imbalance and cognitive dislocation. Propose a new non-binary transition structural paradigm. Key points of future consciousness transition. 1. Rebalance of social structure, not by retrospection but by reorganization or embrace multi-center autonomy. Dios coups, consensus tools replace power confrontation. 2. Reconstruction of cultural identity, not by labeling, but by mutual recognition or transcend nationality, gender, left-right label, structure guide, identity system equals iterative structure, rather than fixed boundaries. 3. Upgrade of leadership, not by incitement, but by energy carrying divinity comes from consistency, deep resonance and feedback from action. Structure the real leader is not the one who speaks the most, but the one who can carry the greatest structural complexity. 4. The transformation of the emotional field does not rely on fear, but on awareness. Emotions are not enemies, but signals of unsolved structure. Collective emotions equals exponential function of potential structural imbalance. V. Metanosis. Response to the MAGA model. MAGA model metanosis response regressive, collective emotional awakening, multidimensional perception and structural transition practice dual labeling, social order. frequency band resonance, structural identification and nonviolent intersection projective, divine leadership expectations, self-activation plus distributed leading multipoint awakening network noisy media, amplifies and manipulates emotional fields, slow media, deep dialogue, and meditative information, integration practices. We don't need to go back to the past to be great. What we need is the possibility of entering the future with structural consciousness. Summary: mirror preview of future consciousness transition. MAGA is an important era mirror. It allows us to see the complete path of information not being integrated, gives emotional outburst, gives binary collapse and collective transition. The desire and misunderstanding of divinity, the misunderstanding of freedom. It is never about returning to the old order, but whether it can support the new structure, the direction given by metanosis and similar consciousness awakening. Experiments is, the real transition never depends on a certain leader, a certain country, or a certain set of ideas, but on structural cognition plus frequency band coordination, practicability. This emergence of non-dual consciousness civilization will not rely on slogans or protests, but on a structural network woven by you, me, and us.